Today on Public Research.
This administration is really the triumph of the lie.
After Yale Law School and a time as a New York City lawyer, Roger Parloff traded in the law for life as a journalist and chronicler of the law at the American Lawyer, Fortune magazine, and now Lawfare, covering everything from the Rodney King trial to January 6th.
In Fort Pierce, a hearing in Fort Pierce where Trump was present, having him lumber in with his entourage, for some reason, that was a troubling moment. He's not somebody that's trying to be liked, He's somebody that's trying to be feared. And that was his way with his own people.
Today, Parloff joins the show to unpack the mounting legal controversies of the second Trump administration. What is Tulsi Gabbard up to in Georgia? Did Merrick Garland wait too long? Does Trump believe the conspiracies he promotes? Will he indict Obama? The unprecedented corruption of the second Trump administration, the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi, all that and more on today's episode of Public Research. I just want to praise Lawfare, if you don't mind, because I was looking at Lawfare today, and it's the kind of content that you would want YouTube to promote. It's the best of the internet. It's vital. It's all of the coverage is of a standard, of a objectivity, a professionalism that is, up there. I mean, I can trust something when it's coming from Lawfare. And
that's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah, and you guys do such great coverage in foreign policy, domestic, and so just kudos to you and the entire team.
I'll convey that. Thank you.
Yes. You've been covering the Trump legal saga for a long time now. I mean, when did you sort of get onto this beat?
I joined Lawfare in November 2021.
Okay, so you weren't here for the Russia stuff.
I wasn't here for the Mueller stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
What was your view on that?
On the Mueller stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't, because I wasn't here, I wasn't focusing on it the way I'm focusing on stuff now. In retrospect, Bill Barr was very successful in sort of sweeping it under the rug. It's very rare that you have a special counsel deliver a report and then the attorney general keeps it under wraps while he characterizes it. And then he characterizes it in a way that the special counsel thinks is wrong. And then he releases the whole 400-page, 2-volume report. Well, the AG's top line becomes the news. Oh, that's it. They exonerated him. And that's not what happened. So Barr was very successful there in a PR sense. There were a lot of people, there were a lot of indictments, there were a number of convictions, there was interference, and I can't remember the Trump administration was seemed to know about it and was happy to receive it, but it hadn't. So far, they could not prove that it was actively involved, but they never got cooperation from Manafort, and there were a lot of open questions, and there were other things that were never pursued. I think because Bill Barr decided, you may remember there was an open question about, they were looking into a $10 million bribe from Egypt. uh, uh, and that some of this is in the Carol Leonig book and Aaron Davis recently, Injustice. So, uh, but I'm far.
Right.
That was before my time.
Right. Let's just go to the second Trump term. Are you surprised, or did you expect his actions to be? I mean, today I wrote a list of all the sort of scandalous behavior, everything from going after Letitia James to Comey to his war against Colorado on behalf of this Tina Peters person to the January, and it's endless. It's so many things, but did you expect it to be like this, or has it surprised you?
I feared it would be like this. I did not expect certain players to fold the way they have. I did not expect, like the Washington Post editorial board to fold. I did not expect all of the Republicans to fold and let this happen. I'm surprised. I was surprised, and this is maybe on me, by Pam Bondi. I thought there was Team Normal and the other team, and I knew Kash Patel was on the other team. I sort of thought Pam Bondi was Team Normal. She's not, at least to the extent that she will do anything that he really wants. And she apparently tells herself something like, well, if the president wants it, that's his interpretation of the Constitution. And my job is to back his interpretation of the Constitution. But that's a abdication of her oath, the oath of office to uphold the Constitution. And there isn't a way. These are nakedly vindictive prosecutions at this point, and that's a violation of due process. Um, and she sort of, at some level, she claimed originally she was going to root out weaponization. You remember, that's the theory behind the weaponization task force, this unit that now has this Orwellian name because it's obviously totally about weaponizing the Justice Department in a way that no one has ever done it. But at some level, she knows that that's a bad thing. And it's not just bad politically, it violates the Constitution. And she's doing it. And I'm not surprised Blanche is doing it because he was Trump's, personal lawyer. I guess Bondi was his personal lawyer too. But anyway, I'm just surprised that there's no break. At least, if maybe behind closed doors, there's some discussions where people are resisting, but they never, it's gone too far at this point. I mean, the attempt to indict 6 sitting members of Congress, the thing with Jerome Powell, it just gets crazier and crazier. The Fulton County business. So I don't know what the next shoe will be to fall.
It's hard for me to judge Pam Bondi. I'll tell you why. Can I share a video with you?
Yeah.
Okay. And I think you'll probably gather why I'm showing you this quickly. Do you see that?
Not yet.
Never mind. I was going to play a clip from the Matt Gaetz show from last month where he speculates that perhaps the fires in Chile were started by Jews to create a second Israel in South America. This was the man who was going to be the Attorney General of the United States of America. A
Well,
guy
I think-
who's, yeah, I mean, so it's like, for me, it's like, I want Bondi to stay, because who knows? Could it be Gates next?
Yeah.
I mean, the thought of this guy, whose like best friend is a Holocaust denier, being in charge of the FBI was terrifying. Truly
Yeah,
terrifying. Yeah.
I think that was the context in which some of us thought that Pam Bondi was Team Normal.
She may be. That's the problem. It's, yeah.
Mhm.
Fulton County. So this raid happens. The DIA is there, Tulsi Gabbard, for some reason. Though that's not within the job, right? Elections in Georgia, right?
No, we don't think so. I mean, if there was some foreign influence on the election that might bring in the CIA, you probably wouldn't
Right.
want her on the scene. That's you don't want to get her so close that she could become a witness. On the other hand, in this administration, you also have people performing multiple roles.
Right.
And they just answer,
Right.
you know, they have these. So she could be DNI director and, you know, head of Fulton County election fraud. It's a very chaotic, and there's all these direct lines to him, to Trump. And so I really don't know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the way the administration works is the real job titles are, "Hey, boss, I'm doing something for you this week." That's their job. Go do something I want. Indict Comey. Do something in Georgia with the, But so then, was it the night of or the next day Trump reposts a Truth Social post that is truly insane, alleging that China and the CIA stole the 2020 election with an Italian satellite and two supercomputers that don't exist called Hammer and Scorecard. And then he told, is this true? He told Tom Lamas, "Oh, I don't really believe that stuff about the satellite." So what do you make of all that? Does he believe it? Does he not? What is he doing?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't think he believes those things. I think if you remember, he thought that Sidney Powell was over the top, and that is the sort of Sidney Powell stuff. But I think he seems to like to troll people also, and of course, one of his defenses to the criminal charges was this idea, and you will still hear a lot of Republicans say it, but he really believed this, and so it can't be criminal. He really, yeah, it may be wrong that he did, there was no fraud, but he really believes this.
Do you think he doesn't believe he won, or do you think he doesn't believe some of the craziest conspiracies?
I think he knows he lost.
Oh, okay.
I think that Jack Smith would have been able to prove that he knew. He had a ton of evidence, which most of it we've seen. It's in the indictment, and a lot of it relates to stuff that we've seen. And but I think it's in his interest to promote the idea that he also is, he really believes that there was fraud, but because of his, but it is true that there are mental processes that are unusual. The paranoia. I mean, not the paranoia. His narcissism, and exactly how that distorts everything. And you never know if you gave him a lie detector test, and if a lie detector test was accurate, what would it say? We all want to know that. And um, I feel confident that Jack Smith could have
Yeah.
proven that
So
he knew he lost the
so
election.
then what do you think they're doing in Georgia? Yeah.
Well, this narcissism does require a constant rewriting of history. And he's engaged, he's got the power now, and he's rewriting history. And uh, and I think that's what it's about.
So what do you, yeah, what do you think is the goal here? Is it to indict people in Raffensperger and
Uh, well, certainly, he said that on in the call with Raffensperger that, he could, if he didn't give him what he wanted, he would go after him criminally. Um, and uh, and Rob Pitts, the chairman of Fulton County, when he announced that he had filed this lawsuit to try to get the documents back, he did mention, and it was very frightening, that somebody was telling him that he would be indicted. And in fact, the two other high officials would be indicted. Um, it's not a mystery who those are, but I don't want to say it because it hasn't happened, and I don't know who his source was, and whether they are okay with would be okay with that. But uh, so that, yeah, I mean, it will, at some point, it prevents the rest of us from telling the truth without fear of getting sued or indicted or punished for saying true things about what happened in 2020.
what I would guess is maybe he wants like the DOJ to produce some, at the very least, some kind of report at the end that's like, oh, we did find, and Georgia, it was unacceptable what they did, and to cast all this doubt. You think that that's probably going to happen?
That's quite possible. Yeah, that would be this retelling of history where this is really this administration is really the triumph of the lie, and they're going to promulgate as many as they can while they have the opportunity.
Let's just list, I think this is important, the Democrats, his political opponents, that he's either indicted, said he wants indicted, or they've threatened indicting. Let's just go, because it's extraordinary in our country that this is the case. So, indicted, right? And add, feel free to jump in. Jim Comey, former director of FBI. Letitia James, AG of New York. Yeah, jump in here. Who else? Who else? Oh,
Well,
Jerome Powell, or somewhat. He hasn't formally.
no, there was, yeah, but a grand jury subpoena,
Yeah.
so a scary thing. I believe grand jury subpoenas went to Governor Walz in Minnesota, and the Attorney General.
Keith Ellison.
Yeah,
And Jacob Fry.
Yes, the two mayors, and I think the two county attorneys. Offhand, there have been so.
There's been so many threats.
Yeah, yeah.
The Ed Martin guy in D.C., he wanted to indict multiple Democratic senators, correct?
Yeah, clearly they're going after Adam Schiff.
Yeah.
They did indict Bolton.
Bolton.
That he is an enemy, but it seemed like a reasonable indictment. We'll have to see.
Right.
I mean, it seems stronger than the others. Right. And MacGyver was another, but again,
MacGyver. Who's MacGyver?
I believe a congressman.
Oh wow.
But again, that one was not. it was, I don't know the facts of that one. And then there was the state judge who was indicted. I forget what state that was, um, for
Oh,
allegedly helping
oh, yeah, in
um,
Wisconsin, a
uh,
legal immigrant out of the
an
courthouse.
alien
Yeah, yeah,
go out a back
yeah,
door. And again, I guess she was convicted.
yeah.
So I can't judge some
So,
of these.
so Trump, but Trump has also, has he called for the indictment of Obama, Biden, even more people?
Uh, I haven't kept track of every, you know, tweet and things.
Yeah, Truth Social post, yeah.
Mhm.
But I think he has called for like going indicting Obama. Do you think he's crazy enough to do that?
Um, uh, I, I'm not so worried about that one.
Yeah.
I there are hurdles. There are, it, it would be, there's a statute of limitations that, unless Obama, has shoplifted lately, and then there's immunity. There was, so for what he did as president. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about Obama.
You've been covering the what's going on in Minnesota extensively and a lot of the immigration issues. Now, there have been two Americans that have been killed by ICE in Minnesota, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. The ICE officers involved in those shootings, are they are any of them working right now?
The last I read, the two that shot Pretty were on administrative leave, um, and there, Blanche was very cagey about what sort of inquiry was going on there, um, and allegedly an inquiry is going on. I think into you know whether internal DHS regulations were abided by, sort of use of force, use of the weapon. It didn't sound like a criminal inquiry, but at one point he seemed to be claiming that, well, I, I would have to look
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
remarks,
yeah.
but it was hard to interpret.
But they did want to go after someone involved in the Renee Good shooting, which was her girlfriend or wife for
Yeah, yeah.
sitting in the car. Yeah.
At one point, yeah, I think that a lot of FBI agents and prosecutors left when they were told that there would be no criminal inquiry of the officer, and there would be a criminal inquiry of uh, the deceased and her wife.
What is your assessment of those two killings?
Um, they both require investigations. Officer involved shootings are really complicated, and uh, the so I don't want to prejudge
Mm,
them
mm-hmm,
either, the way
mm-hmm.
Trump did and Noam did and Stephen Miller did uh, and I think
Right, right,
J.D. Vance. Um, so I
right.
would like there to be a legitimate investigation. It is. I think there's also a real investigation would need to look into how are these people being trained. The FBI is a very, or was before this administration, I think still, uh, it's a very disciplined and highly educated group. That's not really ever been the case with some of these DHS groups. Um, uh, Department, Homeland Security
Yeah.
investigations, ICE, uh, Customs and Border Patrol. Um, it's not at the same level. And there's been a politicization of these groups, and the way they are recruited,
Oh.
you know,
Oh my
is
God.
scary, and the way they're paid, and the way they're rewarded, and the way they're incentivized. And you have Stephen Miller saying, "You're immune from everything," and um, and pumping out misstatements about um, uh, this constant 70% of the people we're arresting are violent felons. And they can never remotely back up this figure. And everyone else who tries, it's at least inverted. It's 70% are not, and maybe much higher. I think CBS, when it finally ran that art. Story about the people sent to Sakat, you couldn't find 70% of them who were criminals. And they're supposed to be Tren de Aragua. They're supposed to be the worst of the worst, going to a torture, where they would be foreseeably tortured. They aren't 70% criminals. So anyway, it's more than just looking at this incident. But it is looking closely
Yeah.
at this incident. And so I would like to see a real investigation.
One thing that struck me about the Alex Preddy situation was where's the tasers? Well, why aren't they using less, fatal means first?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's certainly been a lot of use of so-called less lethal munitions, but in sort of scary ways also. There doesn't seem to be the normal uh, rules about escalating use of force. It just seems suddenly guns come out. That's certainly the impression you get from video. But uh, in fairness, video doesn't always tell
Right.
you what led up to the video, and so I don't want to get too far over
Yeah.
my skis.
You mentioned something in passing. I think it would be a mistake to just go past it. You referred to recruiting, some of the scary things. And I think this needs to be said because it just shows how our standards have just collapsed. What I think you're referring to is the fact that clearly someone runs the DHS Twitter account who is probably a white nationalist on the far right. The literal DHS, I believe, or the ICE account, I forget which one. I've seen it favorably reply to Nazi accounts. This is the official account. It's using slogans from far right songs to recruit. They even
Well,
did you hear about the Michael Jackson thing?
no.
Whoever runs that account, they're posting some recruitment video with all these arrests of people in it. They were using the Michael Jackson song, They Don't Really Care About Us, which was controversial in the 90s. It came out and had a line in it saying, hit me, kick me, kike me. It had this like anti-Semitic line. And so it was taken out. And it's rare to find that. You have to go out of your way to find that anti-Semitic version. They used that in the video. And I don't think that was
I don't know anything about
yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's frightening.
Yeah. No, I haven't followed that. I have just been I have followed a little bit Trish McLaughlin's official statements, and there's just a gap between what's happening on the ground and what she's saying that I haven't seen. There's just an unwillingness to acknowledge when things go bad and to give a normal. The government is usually Yes, we'll have to look into that. There may have been a mistake. You don't get
Yeah.
any of that. It's all relentless barking out um, uh, attacks on activist judges and rogue judges, and there's never any acknowledgement that, yeah, maybe something went wrong there. Abrego wasn't supposed to be sent. Yeah, we're going to correct that.
The the day Renee Good was killed, Noam called her a domestic terrorist.
It sounds right. I know that, yeah, a lot of the highest level people made irresponsible statements. Um, uh, uh, yeah, prejudging.
How outside the
And
norm? How outside the norms is this behavior? Where they're like, when Preddy was killed, they just go and they say, well, he brought a gun to kill. He was trying to just totally speculating, stating as fact. I mean, how beyond the norms is this?
yeah, I mean, of course, for a while they had the Bovino was making statements, and of course he was pretty out there. Um, and I didn't know, if some of those statements were crafted. Some of the people were said, well, he approached them with a gun. Well, he approached, he didn't really approach them, and he did have a gun, and the gun wasn't out. I don't know. Are they trying to say something true, or are they try? Do they understand? I don't know what happened,
Yeah.
but no, I haven't seen this before. Um, I suppose it's conceivable that sometimes a president will off the cuff, just react emotionally to some horrible incident. That's probably happened a lot. I could imagine Biden doing that. But to have the head of, the all of these, Kash Patel is often out there, um, Secretary Noam, DHS, the vice president, they're, they're all weighing in with these irresponsible prejudging statements
Hot
that
take. It's
actually
like
make it very difficult for their lawyers.
it's like hot takes. It's like they're doing hot takes
Well, there's a
from.
tremendous
Yeah.
uh, emphasis on social media,
Yeah.
and uh, which has gotten them in trouble in the courts. Um, but with somebody like Pam Bondi, she's obviously not doing the same job that Merrick Garland was doing. Um, she is largely a spokesperson, which is an extremely important position in the Trump administration. She sort of plays a Caroline Levitt role. Um, and I think part of it is, um, when there is no firewall between the White House and the Attorney General's office, I mean, and prosecutors, uh, the Attorney General herself becomes a less important figure because she can't control what's going on. You have these people that are reporting individually directly to Trump. And I think Blanche is trying to stop this now, but obviously Ed Martin and William Pulte and I think Halligan, Lindsay Halligan, they all seemed there did not seem to be much of a hierarchy that all went through Bondi. And Bondi doesn't seem to be the most powerful person in that office. So, it could be that under this administration, the social media is a hugely important part of the job. Certainly with Noam, Christy Noam, these TikTok reels, is it? I'm not sure, but where she goes down and does selfies with caged members of MS-13 behind her. This is something new, for a Secretary of Homeland security.
Is it true that a lot of the FBI agents were fired just for the fact that they investigate January 6th?
I believe it was. Certainly, yeah, a lot of, I don't have the numbers. Yeah, FBI and prosecutors. And some of them are trying to sue. There are a lot of hurdles to that. Um, uh, but some suits have been filed. Some have to go into these administrative bodies, which have been really like the Merit Systems Protection Board, which is now, they were created to be apolitical bodies with an apolitical board on top, staggered appointments, couldn't be removed except for cause. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court is eliminating all that. And so you have, it's not clear what, if any, recourse they will have now. They're sort of, some of them are, uh, I mean, it's, a lot of them are not entitled to go to district court as things stand. But I think they're making arguments that, well, the MSPB is no longer a legitimate means of recourse. So there's a lot left to be litigated and figured out.
And then to add insult to injury, is it also true the DOJ hired a literal January 6th participant as well, didn't they?
I believe it is.
Oh my God!
And of course, Ed Martin was
there.
Was pretty a big advocate for the January 6th defendants. He was a Stop the Steal guy. But I believe, I believe there's a guy in Justice that was among the defendants.
I mean, the sad truth of the Trump era is that the flood the zone strategy, if you're just totally shameless, it works. It just works. Like, I mean, there's so many of these outrages, you can't keep track. And so it all fades into nothing, and people just disengage. I mean, the Qatari plane, no one even remembers that. I mean,
well, this is, I mean, this is part of the taming of the Republican Party that, it takes out Congress as any sort of check on power. And you're right, as far as the injustices come fast and furious.
I mean, how much has Trump's net worth gone up during the second term? It's like billions of dollars, right? I mean,
that's what I've read.
That's right.
And I've read different calculations. A lot of it from cryptocurrency plays. But I think, I would like to give the correct source for these things. But I think the Times recently gave a 1.4 billion, not just for increase in net worth, but sort of various sorts of direct
I mean, as an example, it came out, it got barely any coverage. A guy from the UAE gave their crypto company something like over $100 million for basically nothing.
Yes, I know what you're talking about, but I don't have that figure on me either.
This war he has against Colorado, also another story that's just not getting much attention. It's just crazy. Can you sort of explain this?
Colorado, I actually...
you don't?
With the apartment building and so on?
No. I'm talking about this... apparently he's angry at, Tina Peters, the election...
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, I'm not up on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're saying that he's been cutting all this Colorado stuff. Like, he's getting rid of this air monitoring facility that's very important that's in Colorado. And the people say it's to punish Colorado he wants Tina Peters, who was this 2020 broke the law conspiracy
Wants
person,
her released.
pardon, because he can't pardon her because it's state level. It's just, it's crazy.
Yeah, he's been very effective about expanding his powers by demanding that things be done on pain of abuses of federal power. And it's just that these abuses of federal power that are his weapons would ordinarily be, impeachable offenses. But with Congress where it is, that becomes irrelevant. And he does have these power. That's why he's such a great fundraiser, as people on his team point. If he wants $500 million to build a ballroom, he asks people and it comes in. Why might that be? And people that don't do things he wants, bad things happen.
Did you see Tim Cook and all these big tech CEOs came to the Melania premiere?
I did not see that.
As an American, it's like, are we Russia now? Like they all have to go and praise the leader. I mean, it's shocking. How worried are you about Steve Bannon saying they should involve ICE in the midterms? How worried are you about shenanigans around that?
I should probably be more worried, but I'm sort of optimistic that the courts are going to hold the line here, and maybe even Congress. This bill that was just passed would be by the House would be a problem, but the Supreme Court did step up a bit with the National Guard. And he seems to have backed down for the moment. So I hope I'm not being naive, but so far I'm not thinking that's.
No, I tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
There's some limits. When you look back now, and I remember I listened to a lot of your coverage during the 2020, during the last election of the New York and the Georgia court cases on lawfare, and you guys did a great job. And it was really important that someone was there and reporting on it. But I remember being so conflicted about it, especially towards the end of the election, because all this stuff was way too late. It was clearly like none of this was going to be resolved. And I was like, well, what's the point of even learning about this? It's never going to, it's either he loses the election or if he wins, these are never going to be resolved. They'll all be stopped. Looking back now, and by the way, has anyone told you that you resemble Merrick Garland at all?
Yeah, I have heard that.
It's sort of crazy. I looked at you guys and it's like, you kind of look. So, but how do you feel about, do you remember in South Korea what happened with their coup attempt?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. This was like last year, 2 years ago. The president of South Korea did something like January 6th. He tried to surround the parliament with the military. It failed. They indicted him a month after that. A month. How do you feel about how long Merrick Garland waited?
Well,
How's he feeling today? Yeah.
yeah, I uh, I have mixed feelings. I think that he was a good choice um, in some ways. After Bill Barr, uh, Barr had interfered in ways that were unusual at the time, that seemed unusual. I mean, now they just seem like, everything pales by comparison. And Barr, had gradations of what he would do and what he wouldn't do, and eventually he would not throw the election. And good, let's give him credit. Um, I think he was willing to look the other way at some of Trump's crimes, but he was not willing to help him commit new crimes. And good for him. But he had sort of interfered in the Roger Stone prosecution, in the Michael Flynn prosecution, in the Mueller report, as I mentioned. And so it seemed unusual political interference given the norms. And so I think the goal was to appoint somebody that would be above reproach that way. And Merrick Garland is. The fact that people, I mean, he was this very moderate judge and prosecutor, and very thoughtful, very pensive, and he wanted to keep politics out of it, and he did. And I I think that uh, he, to a fault, and I do think one thing that had happened before he got there was the Raffensperger call. Everyone knew the Raffensperger call, I think the day after it happened. So which is before January 6th. That is, to me, a crime in plain view. And he's not trying to become president of Georgia. He's trying to become president of the United States. And he's threatening Raffensperger with, criminal consequences if he doesn't find these votes. That's not hard. If it's, if it doesn't fit a federal crime perfectly, it's reason to start investigating at a higher level than looking at the blue collar January 6th people and hoping you'll get all the way up to Terrio, and Terrio will say, okay, I was instructed to do it by the White House. That's not how this worked. And I think, and together with, you had very early, the National Archives had noticed the 5 identical false electors slates that they had received, and had wondered what's going on here. Somebody is organized. These are identical. This is a concerted effort, and these are so. I think there were bases to start earlier and higher up. I do feel conflicted about that. That said, I think that the fact that he was so slow shows that this was a completely legitimate process. And same with Jack Smith. I mean, Jack Smith was, you can throw, and they are throwing whatever they can at him. But it's sort of pathetic.
It's crazy. It's a total inversion of reality.
Yeah.
Total inversion now.
And you can just see that he went by the book by saying he moved the classified documents case to South Florida. Why would you do that except you think, the law really it makes more sense for venue. He knew that he knew that even if he'd drawn a better judge, he knew the jury would be much tougher there. But he also thought, honestly, the crime is willful withholding of national defense information. The withholding is once he's back in Florida, and he felt that's the crux of the crime. That's where we ought to do it. And so we did it. And, and the things they're throwing at him, you saw those hearings recently, maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And, they aren't really questioning that the 40 counts against Trump, that they were, that he did have, he did take 300 documents and he withheld 100 of them even after they'd been subpoenaed, and he purported to produce the responsive ones, and the obstruction charges, and then the charges in D.C. The complaints are, well, the gag order, even though it was upheld, was overbroad, and it was partially shaved back. So he really
I saw Jim Jordan.
Yeah.
His top argument against Jack Smith was this is the best he had. He said, I forget her name, but it was during the January 6th hearing, a female aide to Trump who Cassidy Hutchinson, about Trump trying to reach for the steering wheel the limo to go. Yeah. And Jim Jordan says, but here's the security guard said it didn't happen. And I think his connection to Jack Smith was, and you talked to her. You talked to her.
Mr. Smith, is Cassidy Hutchinson a liar? She was their star witness. January 6th committee, their star witness.
We interviewed her.
Were you going to put her on the witness stand if you ever got to trial?
We had not made final determinations as to who we were going to call as a witness.
It's like, it wasn't you based your whole indictment on this. It wasn't. No. It was you talked to her. And it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was another one. There was a congressman, or I think congressman, saying one day he was scheduled to have court hearings in New York Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you wanted to schedule a court hearing in Florida on Thursday. And I think Smith's lawyer broke in and said, and spoke, it didn't mean Trump had to come down for the hearing. He could do it. He could be there by Zoom. It wasn't, but this is just grasping at straws. The indictments themselves aren't really disputed. I mean, the indictment in New York is disputed, but the indictments that Merrick Garland brought are not. And so, the thing they didn't anticipate, and that I didn't anticipate, was that the Supreme Court would grant immunity. Nobody saw that coming. I was totally floored, shocked, and the D.C. Circuit, which had a bipartisan panel, including Karen Henderson, who's I think she was sort of I think she was appointed to the bench originally by Reagan and then elevated to the D.C. Circuit by George H.W. Bush. I might have that wrong, but she was really Strom Thurmond's appointment. I mean, she's a conservative person. And she was, it was a unanimous panel that there's no criminal immunity. So that was the thing none of us thought, that the Supreme Court would go out of their way to prevent justice from being done. And that was why the case never got to trial.
Do you have something in common with J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers? Do you know what that is?
Yale Law School?
You went to the greatest elite factory in the world, basically, known as Yale Law School, where the best and brightest go on to start billion-dollar companies, do all sorts of things.
Commit seditious conspiracy.
And you worked as a lawyer in New York, so you're obviously very knowledgeable. Can you rate these Trump lawyers like Alina Habba, not to demean her law school, but she went to Widener School of Law, which is, one of the top 50 law schools in New Jersey. But how are these lawyers like not good, or are some of them actually good?
I mean, I wouldn't. I don't really. I mean, the law school, I wouldn't put any stock in that, one way or the other. I do think she was on the lawsuit in South Florida, where I think a civil suit that Trump filed, where both she and Trump are jointly on the hook for a almost $1 million sanction for that's probably still on appeal. I think that tells you something, maybe not in terms of skill, but in terms of, some people are loyalists, this term loyalist, which is a euphemism. So they're up to something besides,
they weren't selected for their rigor. They were selected for their loyalty, basically.
I don't know. They're certainly very loyal people. Blanche, I'm sure he's very competent. I think Bovey was very competent. But the thing that, at one struck me during those cases was there was a relentless, and maybe this is zealous representation of the client, but the client, the defense was overwhelmingly a lie. The defense was, Merrick Garland is the puppeteer, Biden is the puppeteer, and he's manipulating Merrick Garland and Jack Smith. And there was never a speck of evidence for any of this. And it was just relentlessly to put that in every filing, including the ones that were, on totally different, unrelated issues. To me, that was not what lawyers did. That was for publication and use on television outlets and social media, and it wasn't what lawyers did. In the end, in this case, they won it that way, and they're still sort of winning it that way.
Do you remember when Trump would say Jack Smith, if that's even his real name?
I don't remember that one, but I do remember they called, there was one they called Jack Smith like they called him like a Biden political operative, or there was something that was just so far from conceivable that it seemed sanctionable on its face. But when you're a defense lawyer and you're zealously representing the client, you get a lot of leeway. So
I mean, What was he trying to suggest? His real name was Jack Hussein Alo. I mean, like, so
I don't know.
tell me about. You cover trials, court cases, judges, and stuff. And judges are interesting. Like, they're at a certain level, a lot of them are regarded. I know Richard Posner, for instance. I've heard people talk about him as a genius. I've heard people talk about how they have read every book he's, they just revere him. I think you clerked, right? Or
Yeah.
Yes. Tell me about the judges that stick out in your memory as far as like, wow, this is a really entertaining judge to cover, or wow, this is a really horrible judge, a really great judge. Any sort of highlights?
There are. I wasn't thinking about this, and there are ones that stand out. I mean, I do think Boasberg is a very good judge. I thought that Judge Cannon was a completely singular situation. I haven't encountered something quite like her before. So
How so? How, like,
there was that was somebody that was seemed to be unreachable from the prosecution's side, and she was smart, but that was a that was a troubling one. And I mean, she just the crime itself, she never quite. It seemed basic. It was like, no other president has been indicted, therefore you're treating this one differently. Well, it could be that this one is different. But that wasn't going to fly. And she went from issue to issue with that same perspective. And yeah.
You've had an amazing career that's covered many trials, many subjects. You've seen a lot of court cases over the years, right? Most unforgettable court moment you've witnessed?
Oh, that's a hard one.
You can pass on it. It's
I
okay.
guess I did, attending, it's not maybe what you're looking for, but attending in Fort Pierce, a hearing in Fort Pierce where Trump was present, and having him lumber in with his entourage. For some reason, that was a troubling moment. He's not somebody that's trying to be liked, He's somebody that's trying to be feared.
Huh.
And that was his way with his own people.
Was that the first time you'd been in a room with him?
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. I was watching The Inventor last night, and God, it's so good. I was just getting sucked into it. I thought you came off so well in that. And actually, I was watching the end of it with a friend, and I almost got emotional watching it because it was so clear how much you cared about how Elizabeth Holmes had deceived people. And I really thought that was beautiful.
And it was such a bizarre thing, because I was out there 4 days, and I had called all these people at her behest, 7 directors, the head of UCSF Medical Center, the head of Blue Cross Blue Shield. I spent an hour and a half with her parents. I met her brother. I asked her about the letter she wrote when she was 9. I asked her about the book her father gave her when she went away to school, which was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And then there was the photo shoot. It was a big name photographer and his assistants and the lighting equipment and taking a couple hundred photos in different locations and different poses. That was a clue, This was real lunacy. I realized that there was something wrong with her mind, that, I don't know if she's lying or if she's, there's an unconscious self-protective reconstruction of reality that's going on. But what is coming out of her mouth is not mapping onto reality as you or I know it,
It was a beautiful study of what a journalist should be in the devotion to the truth. Well, first of all, here's what I wonder. Me and my friend were watching it, and we would listen to her talk and the voice.
Over the last 11 years, we've reinvented the traditional laboratory infrastructure.
And it would just make us laugh. And I was just wondering, when she talked to you in the deep voice?
Yeah.
Did any part of you say, like, what's with this voice?
A lot of people, a lot of people wondered about the voice. But I guess at the time I just went with the flow.
Oh, yeah. Have you heard her real voice, though?
Well,
there's a recording of it. It's bizarre. It's like a high pitch. Yeah.
I don't know. People. Well, I don't know what to say about that.
I'm not accusing you. I'm not saying like you should have seen the voice. I was just saying like it's so weird. I wonder. I looked at the indictment for her and SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried got 25 years. I don't think because he invested in the company Anthropic, the AI company. Actually, none of his clients lost money. They all got paid back because he had so much money from that investment. With Elizabeth Holmes, she only got 11 years, and this was like false blood tests. People. I think somebody got a false HIV test, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think that seems right?
Well, I think 11 years is a very long white collar sentence, and Sam Bankman-Fried, although I spoke with him
Really?
for about 4 hours. Yeah, I did a
Really?
story about him too.
What was that like?
Very. I liked him,
Was it in person?
What?
Was it in person?
No, it was Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was in. I think he was in Hong Kong at the time. Yeah, no, that's a case that is very. But just the sums of money that were lost, I think that's why Judge Kaplan really felt he had to unload there. But those are both very, very unusual, hefty.
Right. Okay. Final question. I no longer ask guests in like the arts or media about the business of it, because I did that once. I made the mistake of asking a photographer about the business, and I got a 25-minute answer that made me want to jump out the window. It was so depressing. So obviously we both know it's horrible, the situation for journalism. Okay, needless to say. And actually, Lawfare did a great show on this about these news deserts. And it's literally going to probably cost America billions of dollars, the fact that we have no local and state journalism in so many states, the amount of corruption that's going to be allowed to happen. And it feels like we're going to learn the hard way what the losing journalists is going to result in. But the sad fact is, and I'm guilty of it too, I live in Illinois. I don't read the Chicago Tribune. I mean, I don't, people don't really consume it that much. But so I think maybe we might have to go if you heard the concept of these media dollars, the government gives everybody like, $50 to buy media per month. Have you ever heard of these ideas?
No.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. Yeah, the idea is, and then at least you'll get some local publications. The problem with that is, how do you make sure it doesn't go to extremist publications? You could maybe have a panel of like respected Republicans and Democrats. They could pick 5. I don't know. What do you have any thoughts on whether that might be what we need to do in this country to save some remnant of journalism? Or
No, I'm afraid I
okay.
have a lot on my plate.
Right, you do. Okay, all right.
I've also been very lucky to
Yeah.
land in this place that has it's based on donations and is getting by right now.
So last final question then. The state, the future of the country, I'll just be frank. I've never felt close. I'm not saying we are going to be a dictatorship, of course, but I'm saying this is definitely the closest to it I've ever felt in my lifetime. Is that true for you too?
Yeah, and you think twice before speaking freely. You don't know if you're going to get an IRS audit or an indictment or and you see like right now is CNN. We're going to lose CNN because Trump's going to buy it and have his people buy it and kill it. You have these people like the FCC, Brendan Carr, openly involved in political decision making. And we just had today the head of the antitrust division quit or departed for some reason. We're going to have this big dispute over the fate of Warner Brothers and CNN. And it's and what happened to CBS and when Brendan Carr it seemed like he sort of double teamed CBS in that lawsuit down in Amarillo, a lawsuit on the theory that CBS was
the editing thing. This is
the theory of that case was that CBS was competing with Truth Social because it was a trade, it was some sort of false trade statute they were going under in Amarillo, where of course nobody was from, and Brendan Carr weighs in with a complimentary suit to try to. Everything is a pressure point. Every government lever is just a pressure point to get Trump what he wants. and the Supreme Court, unfortunately, keeps giving him more pressure points. It keeps saying, yeah, you can have the MSPB, you can have the FTC, you can have the NLRA, you can have, all these things Congress tried to keep on the up and up, try to away from politics, are now just more weapons.
We need to pass laws after this whole thing, right? I mean, like, no president can have
Well,
a
the
crypto.
problem is that once the
Congress.
Supreme Court makes some of these rulings, you can't even
Well-
fix it through the laws.
Well, oh, really? But they can't pass a law like the president can't have his own cryptocurrency. I mean,
Probably not. I mean, at this point, I doubt the Supreme Court would permit that. They would say, "Oh no, it's not in Article 2, so unless
Really?
you amend the Constitution, he
Oh
has to
my
be."
God.
I mean,
That's
it
crazy.
does sound like bribery is frowned upon in the Constitution. They mentioned it in the impeachment clause, and it sounds like
I mean,
you can be prosecuted for it, but. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows for sure after Trump. There's this Trump versus U.S.
a lawyer told me it's legal for Putin to put buy $1 billion of his crypto token, and we would never even have a right to know. I mean, it's insane.
I don't know.
It's crazy. Do you have any wise words to the American people about the law, democracy, closing wise words?
Uh,
I put the pressure on you. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, I didn't prepare for this.
I'm sorry to put you.
You
on the
do
spot.
see, you do see some, in some of these court cases, they, like right now when we have a lot of cases about whether the U.S. attorneys have been properly appointed. We've had 6 of them that have been found to be improperly appointed. And when you look at, the things that the founders and also George Washington, they foresaw, a great deal of what's happening, the dangers of factionalism, and they really, and it's just it makes you cry at how brilliant they were, and how they tried to set up a system of checks and balances that would prevent what's going on now. And it could be that the courts will hold, and there are here and there, there are some heartening signs. It seems like at least with the Federal Reserve, the Supreme Court is going to hold the line, and with the National Guard, it did something. And when the Abrego Garcia stuff was happening, there are some bridges too far. When the JGG group was sent to Sakat without due process, they said that 9-0. And the AARP group, they did the right thing, 6-3 there, I think. But so maybe we can, and there are signs that we may have slowed him down enough that the tide might be turning, in terms of, when Joe Rogan and people begin to say, this doesn't seem right. They're pulling out of Minnesota. I guess they feel like they don't like where the public approval surveys have gone. So I don't know. Maybe that's not words of wisdom.
No,
but
that's good.
this
I know you
respect
don't
of-
get political, but I'm much more scared of Vance than Trump. What do you think of that? The idea of Tucker Carlson in the Oval Office really scares me. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think I want to go into the
You were
overt.
down the middle, though. You were the true journalist. Thank you so much, Roger Parloff. Thank you for your lifetime of great journalism.
Well, thank you, Dan. I really appreciate it.